I'm back from vacation for a brand new Monster Monday, the best way to start your week. We're still sticking to something on the spooky side in the wake of Halloween, as we dive into the world of Monster Hunter for the onerous oil ogre, the Rompopolo. We continue to expand on the range of creatures from Monster Hunter Wilds with the first hunt of the Oil Basin. While the Rompopolo initially resembles a mosquito, or at least some sort of arthropod with what appears to be a proboscis, a scorpion stinger, and almost mantid-like claws, this gruesome gas giant is a bizarre mix of beast, and that proboscis is actually a beak that houses a gnarly tongue. A wholly unique creature, the Rompopolo largely fights using toxins spewed from its tongue, or by stabbing its stinger tail into the ground and triggering explosions. It builds up this poison in ballooning sacs upon its body, which honestly might make it look freakier when deflated rather than when blown up. Getting into the mechanics of its design, the Rompopolo uses the same level of 9 as our previous Monster Hunter beastie, the Uthduna. It rather simply uses the animal trait, not demonstrating the intellect to warrant the beast trait, and not really fitting any other trait that comes to mind. With a focus on melee combat, while not demonstrating much when it comes to deftness, our bioblasting balloon animal bears a high strength. This is pretty appropriate given that the Rompopolo is a brute wyvern, which also influences the use of a moderate constitution. And I find that to be especially fitting for a creature that makes such liberal uses of poison. Its dexterity and wisdom alike are both left at low, as neither really carry much bearing in its overall design. This low wisdom does lead into a low perception as well, and you could maybe even make it terrible since the Rompopolo isn't exactly an active hunter. Rather, it just digs up buried meals. It does still use dark vision since it dwells in the deep dark domains of the oil wells, where light is limited if not entirely absent. Its acrobatics are low, and specifically on the bottom end of low, whereas its athletics are moderate. This doesn't actually play much of a part in its overall kit, at least not directly, but it can be used to knock enemies about, which might be useful down the line for one of its features. As for its defenses, this bulky beast only has a moderate armor class. It's pretty much the broadside of a barn and is only a bit more agile than that. With that taken into consideration and a weakness to water damage, it has a high pool of hit points that are further fortified by the fact that it has an immunity to poison based on its own heavy use of it. Related to this, it has an almost extreme armor class for its components, but I did something a little different with them this time around. I'll save the full details for that when we get to the actions they affect, but let me know what you think of what I've cooked up here. A bit more simple than that, we do have a high fortitude saving throw since we used a moderate constitution, but I went for a moderate will save despite using a low wisdom, which does clear the way for a full-on low reflex save, and ultimately leaves us with a rather standard array of saving throws to make use of with a high, moderate, and low save. Now the Rompopolo features 3 strikes, though only 2 of them deal straight up damage. These 2 attacks, its claw and tail, both have a moderate attack bonus and some decent reach on them. With the paired claws they use the agile trait, which leads to it only using moderate damage, but its tail is a bit more prominent. I often see it swinging it like a club, leading to the use of bludgeoning damage. However, it also possesses a notable stinger on this tail, which led to the use of a versatile piercing trait. Now even with the reach of this tail and that trait, I still wanted to use a high damage value and make it a bit of a brute. Its final strike is a tongue, which I designed to actually not deal damage but feature a high attack bonus. It also comes with the benefit of the agile trait, making this a pretty potent attack, save for the fact that instead of dealing damage, it exposes opponents to its Rompo venom, and on a critical success, saves against that venom become worse. As for the other effects of this poison, it's pretty typical. It uses a DC just a bit above moderate, and deals slowly scaling poison damage. However, it does also inflict enfeebled, as descriptions of the Rompopolo talk about it using its poison to weaken prey. I don't think this comes through in its actual Mon Hunt kit, but I wanted to bring it into play here for this build. For another one of its simpler abilities, the Rompopolo has Rend. This is a classic monster ability, as it is inspired by the Rompo's double arm overhead strike, bringing down its fearsome claws in a single blow that just deals extra guaranteed damage. Like I said, nice and simple, though players could target its claw component to disable this ability entirely. Its next ability is Poison Flood, based on the poison spray that it unleashes from its tongue. At first, this looks like a typical area effect, but I mix things up just a bit. Normally, I have this target a cone that deals in between limited and unlimited use area damage at a high DC save, while also exposing them to Rompo Venom. However, the Rompopolo could concentrate this poison into a line to deal limited use area damage at the same DC, but doesn't get to expose targets to Rompo Venom. Either way, this goes on a fairly short cooldown, but if players pop the interior sacs of the Rompopolo, they can either increase this cooldown, or put it on cooldown if it's not already there. However, unlike most components, this component does regenerate once a Rompopolo's Poison Flood is off of cooldown, though then the players could simply break it again. As one of the Rompopolo's more unique abilities, it can stab its tail into the ground and inject it with unstable gas to create a gas pocket. These pockets last until the end of the Rompopolo's next turn, at which point, they explode to deal unlimited use area damage at a high DC reflex save. The heroes aren't likely to fall for this after the first time they get caught by it, and might not even get caught by it in the first place. But I think it's still a solid option for field control if nothing else. Related to this, though on a much grander scale, is the signature move of the Rompopolo, which I have dubbed as Rupture Field. In-game, this is based on Tail Thrust, where it surrounds itself in explosion, which is here represented by an emanation that deals limited use area damage and requires a high DC reflex save. On a failed save, this knocks creatures prone, whereas a critical failure also exposes them to Rompo Venom. This has a more standard cooldown die, but it can also be affected by popping its posterior sacs, matching the anterior sacs of its Poison Flood in every way except what it affects. When it came to making gear out of the Rompopolo, I felt compelled to build something based off of the Rompo Robustox, its crazy looking hammer which features a fearsome beak. Since that is the case, I was considering building this as a pick, or at least a hammer with access to piercing damage, and I did find one in the form of the Orc Skewer Maul. This has the benefit of the two-handed trait, which was also something I really wanted, but to fit the Rompopolo a little bit more, I had to add the injection trait to the weapon, given its association with toxins. I also leaned into the bird-like design by naming its unique action Drinky Bird. This is used when it hits a venomous creature and allows it to sap the venom of that creature for the wielder's own use. I originally just had it using a standard DC for the weapon's level, but somebody on Discord suggested including the ability to use the original DC of the poison if it's higher, which I think is decently fair. That all said, that does mean our monster is made. A powerful purveyor of perfidious poisons, this predator perpetuates pain and pangs with a pernicious passion, perpetrating particularly potent peccadillo. The Rompopolo is one of those weird ones of Monster Hunter. It hasn't entirely struck a chord with me, but I do like what I've made here. Poison is a fun concept, which has plagued my players aplenty, and I try to balance it out here in my design of the Rompopolo. Obviously, this caustic creature can be run on its own, but you could certainly feature it alongside the likes of a rogue or an alchemist who uses the chemicals created by the Rompopolo to its own ends, and may have even modified the toxins of this tailed terror. It is good to be back, and I've got some exciting stuff coming up for you, but in the meantime, let me know what you think of this creature and what other sorts of monsters you'd like to see in a comment. If you like what you see here and want more, be sure to leave a like and then subscribe to the channel. You can also check out the blog, which is linked below along with the Twitter and Discord. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.